Luke Dugan, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me for a chat today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Seth. Morning, actually, for you, is it?
It is 9 a.m. for me, and you are in Lithuania, right? So it's 5 p.m.
That's it. So it's 5 p.m. Yeah.
Two
nice and sunny today.
It's
like
hanging out.
Hanging up, actually.
Yeah. So
you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, Mexico City. So we were just chatting off air that I've been hanging out with a couple of other Amazon sellers. So I'm fresh off talking a lot of shop, so it's always nice to chat a bit more about that. So it'd be great if you could introduce yourself, like what you do, and we can go from there.
Sure. Well, you introduced me a little bit there, but my name's Luke Dugan. I've been selling on Amazon now for at least 6 years. I haven't really counted it in a while, but it sounds about right. Something like that. Pretty much before that, it was just, got this degree, did all those usual things that dad kind of like, yeah, you should go and do all that, I did all the business. So at least it was business. It was not like, not to say that geography is bad, but, I know some people did geography and it never really ended up translating into any actual
I did history, so I can relate.
Not to say you can't, but you get what I mean. So at least I did business. So I had some sort of like takeaway from that, at least when I moved into that side of things myself. Obviously before that, then a bit of finance, a bit of operations, sort of the admin-y kind of general bits and bobs of that. Was studying to do like to become an accountant at one point, because that was kind of like the path that I ended up just suddenly appearing on. I was just there. I was like, oh, okay, it's just and that. But after a while, I was like, after I got like 26, and I was just computing all this, like, is that it? I'd done it. Like there isn't like it was just like I don't want to get like a $2,000 pay rise every 2 years or something. Just those little things that started to like flow, and eventually I kind of like, right, I need to start a business. And I actually did have like, I was doing little things with business beforehand. Like when I was 17, I set up like a website selling various things. And so it wasn't like I just kind of was like, I have to do this now because there's no other options. I kind of had it in me. My family's had like a big building company in South England, like family business, uncles and stuff like that, aunts, granddad, my dad. So it kind of came from that side of the family. I kind of had that, even though it didn't instill a lot from that to me. Obviously, I went to the office. I did all those. I went to site, as a kid. So I kind of had it, lightly there for forever. And it's always something I wanted to do. Maybe it's like a subconscious thing, or maybe I wanted to emulate my father. I don't know what it was. Doesn't really matter where it came from. There was, I had that in me, and I was like, right, I need to do something. And I stumbled across Amazon. I can't remember exactly the first thing I actually looked about it online, but it would have been YouTube, and it would have been some sort of like retail arbitrage in America, I believe. It was just quite exciting. Like the guy was traveling around. He didn't even have a place to live. He was traveling hotel to hotel, shipping UPS from his hotel, dropping them off, doing him in his hotel room, and moving to another location. So it was quite like, it was almost like a travel / Amazon, job thing. And it was just a bit cool rather than like sitting, in bed in your boxes on the computer. As cool as that can be at times, don't get me wrong. And slowly I progressed, and I consumed a lot of data, like a lot of information, a lot of data on the topic. And then obviously I was like, yeah, I'm going to start it. And, it was literally just basic retail arbitrage. And back then it was a lot easier in terms of you kind of find things more, I think the first batch of things was like some sort of Paw Patrol stuff, or Ben 10. It was just from like a B&M store or Home Bargains, that kind of thing. And even though I didn't make much money on it at the time, because I was still new, I didn't really know, like over time you kind of you hone your skills in of it, and it's just, and you kind of know where to go and what to do. But I made some money, and I was like, oh, okay, I went to Smith's, got some little toys, and I was like, yep, okay, there is money here. Obviously now it's about sort of steamrolling that. And I used to start doing, retail arbitrage, because online obviously with smaller margins, I didn't have a lot of capital. So I started off with quite a couple of grand, but I didn't want to stretch myself. I was happy to do that at the time, because it was more like my determination to get out of a job was so strong that I was happy to drive around every day for as long as, that was, and it was fun to me at the time. So that was one of the main driving factors. It was like, you also want to enjoy what you're doing as well, not force. That was one of the main things I always said to myself. I don't want to force something to do it. I want to also enjoy it at the same time. And then I slowly progressed selling like secondhand things on Amazon, retail, and I slowly progressed to online arbitrage as I built up my capital and sort of progressed through the years, and then wholesale. And I never pursued any further because that was kind of me. Obviously, some people go into like private label, or they might go into like unique bundles and stuff. But for me, that was kind of the limit. So, as of right now, it's a mix pretty much between wholesale and online arbitrage, and usually within the kind of grocery, home, that kind of area. More, that again suited towards like being VAT registered. Obviously, there's a bunch of grocery items which are 0%, so that's kind of why I stayed in that area. And that's where I am now. So coming up to where I am now, 6 years in. Also have 2 VAs. I live in Lithuania, like you've already mentioned, and I've been here coming up for 2 years now. So I made a decision, if I was going to move away doing something like this, I kind of had to do it now, or back then now, because otherwise, before I know it, I might not be able to. So I took the plunge, in something like July 2020. I pretty much just booked up my Airbnb for 3 months in Lithuania. I just prepaid it all up front, because I was like, if I've done that, then I think it was quite expensive at the time, because I didn't really, I wasn't able to go and like hunt for bargains and stuff locally, because whatever, Airbnb is a bit premiumed. But I whatever it was, I paid it and booked the flight to see it as well, and then I had that date set, and then I was ready to go. So
that's actually quite a big risk, booking an Airbnb for 3 months, because sometimes the photos will be they won't be what they say they are. Like, for example, I stayed in a place in Mexico City which said it had a terrace, and it didn't, and it actually was like an apartment with no natural light. And like, I don't know if you've ever lived in a place with no natural light. It's like being in a prison cell, right? I don't
think I have.
Yeah, so it was horrible. Luckily, I was only there for a week, but I can imagine if I booked 3 months there, I'm sure I would have been able to get a refund. But that's an interesting decision. But that's crazy. Why did you choose Lithuania? Not many people ask it now, because obviously I've said, but they did ask back in the day. They were like, "Oh, that's like a bit of a weird choice," or whatever. There was a couple of reasons. There was one, like, I didn't want to go and choose. Like, at the time, I didn't know anyone else that was really anywhere like in the world as such. Like, the odd person would go off. Like, I know Tom Parkinson, he was in Vietnam still. He was with his girlfriend, I believe, and doing, so there wasn't anyone that was sort of like, why don't you come and join me kind of thing. There wasn't any of that. There probably was, but not that I knew it in circles I was kind of around. So I was like, okay, so how do I do this? What's the, and I always looked like Chiang Mai and all that kind of, back in the day, I was always watching videos on it, but I was like, it's quite far away. Like, to travel, if I wanted to come home, and not to say it's expensive, but is more there's more involved, because it's such a country far away from where I am. So, I did travel. So I went to Lithuania for a couple of days just to visit with my mate randomly. He was like, "Yeah, we're gonna come away like in 3 days." I was like, "Okay," because I could. So me and him just came here. We went to 2 of the cities, and there's only really 2 main cities anyway. So because it's a small country, it's like about 1.4 million people, so it's pretty small. And we came, and I just really enjoyed it, and I just loved it. And I went to Malta and had a look there like beforehand, because I was interested in going. So it was a little holiday just to see, is it like a suitable place? And it wasn't. It was a bit expensive in peak seasons. It like triples or quadruples like in the summer and stuff because of the location. I was like, it's not really practical, like a year-round kind of destination. And eventually I was like, apart from picking around a country on the map like that, I've been to Lithuania, even though it was like 4 days, and I really liked like Kaunas, which is the city I'm in. And I was like, well, why not at least start there? And I can always migrate somewhere else, or I can go back home, or whatever. And 3 months can go like that, right? So I was just like, let's just do it. And because I'd been here for a couple of days, and I kind of had a light understanding of the area, what it was like, the feel. I went out on a couple of nights. I knew a couple of people here from my mate who had some friends here. So it was like, I was having a little bit of a foot in the door without really having it. And I just thought, let's start there. It's not far to get home. It's cheap. If I want to fly home for a visit, easy. Like if there's an event going on, easy. Obviously, none of that happened because of COVID. But like that was the ultimate plan, sort of brainstorm behind it. And then I just,
basically said, yeah, I'm off. And I think I booked it and I was off like 3 months later, as soon as COVID restrictions were removed, because obviously we couldn't fly or do anything like that. Right back in like April, May in 2020. I think that's when, I'm pretty sure I got my dates right. Although I'm terrible, so yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right.
Something like that.
And that's it. And been here ever since. So yeah.
Nice. Living the dream. But yeah, so thanks for sharing all that. I was quite interested to hear that because I also studied accounting for a bit. I also started Amazon when I was 26. And I've also got a family building business, like that my great grandpa started. Yeah. But they're winding theirs down, so it's not like a thing anymore. But
actually, yeah, my dad's already wound his down. That's a bit weird, but because my dad's younger in the family compared to everyone else. So my granddad's already died. My grandma's already died. They're all like, it was my great granddad who started it. My dad's dad. Yeah. But they were always a bit older. So then my dad's about 55, but his brother was now like 69 or something. They're all that kind of age. And for some reason, they never wanted me to get into the building construction industry. They always said it's the first to get hit in a recession, and it's always the last out. Like for some reason, I remember that saying. And he was like, it's always like the margins are so thin. They're always trying to push you. And he basically tried to veer, even though it wasn't like intense veering away, he always tried to veer me away from trying to join it. And then I just never had any intention to pursue it in that sense. But now they've been winding it down because obviously my dad couldn't really do it. He could have taken people on, but it was a family business ultimately. And so they ended up just converting all their remaining offices that they had and used to rentals. And they're just finishing that off. So where they were based is converted to rentals now, and they have other rentals, of course, but they wanted to get like a nice portfolio so they could basically use that as their retirement fund. And so now they're just finishing that off. So once that's done, I mean, the business is still around, right? Because it's going to provide dividends in terms of the rentals, but that ultimately is going to be the final end of that. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it's the same with us. Me and my brother always wondered why we just flat out weren't allowed to even get involved. Like there's no way we were allowed to. It's like, oh, you don't want to do that, Seth. Which it's kind of worked out well, I guess, in the long run. But when you're a teenager and you want a job and they don't give you one, it's a bit frustrating.
Well, actually, yeah, look, I think my dad did give my brother a job when my brother was desperate for a job,
right? And
like almost like my brother just had his first child, and like my brother's got 3 kids now, and I got 0. But like obviously when you've got grandchildren and you potentially can help out, I think my dad but he was pretty much just like a helper, whenever he was. I don't know what he actually did, but sort of just like a general hand around the building sites and stuff.
Right. Now one thing I really wanted to like talk to you about was because the first time I ever saw you, I think this must have been about 4 years ago. You were doing some sort of interview and you were explaining your process, which was, and it blew my mind a little bit because you were saying how you'd find a product on, a big retail site, whether it be like Boots or something, and you would pretty much just like buy out just like the whole of the UK internet almost, like whether that's like 250 items, 500 items. And like I just found that pretty crazy because it's like, is there not loads of risk there that maybe they'll release more products and like you wouldn't be able to buy them all and stuff like that? So is that strategy you still adopt? And I remember you at the time, I don't think you had any VAs.
I do that a lot in Q4.
Oh, okay. So that's still a strategy
like Q4
you do,
that works the best.
Okay.
So I'll let you finish.
No. Yeah, sorry. But no, I was just saying, is that something that you still do, or like that's a job that you give your VAs to do? But that's like a solid strategy.
I usually do that part of it because it's seasonally more than anything. It can be, seasonal can just be wherever it's very busy. It doesn't have to be Christmas. But like I always found it really easy on it started a long time ago, and obviously it's changed with the products and the strategies and stuff, like tweaks stuff every time. But it would have been like Thornton's chocolates, and because they sell a lot anyway. So the ultimate theory is not theory, but the process is, that's you pick your best sellers out of, let's say they're Thorntons. Yeah, so I used to sell a lot of Thorntons at Christmas, so I picked the best ones. Now, not to say, let's say I've got 5 that are great, 5 that are decent. Doesn't mean they're both there's 10, but I really I don't want to focus on 10 because obviously that's a lot of money if you're going to be buying out 10 items. And there's a lot more risk, obviously, you're going against that with the cash that you're actually investing. So I would focus on the main ones, and I would usually know that have like a slight light understanding of what's going to be good next year, because I can just use last year's data, so I can go, over the last 4 years, which ones have been the best, and I can go, oh, well, that one keeps doing well, or that one, those two, fluctuate, but they're always the best ones overall. Like, take averages or whatever you want to do. And I did it last year still as well. It wasn't as good as the previous year because on Thornton's, for example, most of their stock just was never there. That is, they didn't have the supply like they've had previously. So it does, it's not always going to work. And there's going to be other websites that you can do it. This going to. But Thornton's is always a great example because it's just something I've done repetitively with them. But it's a simple chocolate tray. I think you buy. It varies in price, but buy price between like $8.50 and like $10.50. So but if you're buying. I usually like to take it as an average when I'm doing something like that, even though really you could separate it out. It's just easier if I take the average of like 1,000 units bought than it is to go 300 are at £10.20, and then I go, oh, I've got to change the price because like I'm mentally changing how much they paid for them. I just average it out, just find it, because ultimately at the end of the day, if they're all going to sell in that period of time, which is, let's say it's Q4, like by the end of Christmas, I'll just take it as a average. It's just far easier. So I don't have to muck around basically, and I'm happy to take. So I'll buy like 500 at the beginning because I know I can sell them, but I just don't know yet what the play is with that product or those products. So I've got a bunch of them. I don't know which one's going to be the best. I just know they're all going to be decent, but some of them are going to pull away in terms of how the listing is developed. So for example, if it goes out of stock, right? Obviously, then there's going to be a lot less sellers. But if I've got a lot of stock, I can absorb, like, instead of 5 sellers selling it, I can get 5 times the sales now because there's 5 less. Well, if there was, let's say there was 10 of us and then there's now 1, just to keep it simple. Obviously, I'm going to have 10 times the amount of sales, even though nothing's changed on the listing. Just basic stuff, really. Or, if half the sellers drop off, I'll get twice the amount of sales. And that's kind of like the thought process. Knowing that I can do a lot of volume anyway, as well. So you're trying to like compound all the reasons why you should be buying more ultimately. And so it doesn't mean I'm going to go buy like 3,000 on all of them right at the beginning and just go, yeah, let's see which ones do well. Like, I'm more of a gamble style. Like, I don't know which ones are going to do well, but I'll do well on most of them or whatever. I don't. You could do that, but I don't like that very much. I know that I can sell like 500 over the whole of Q4 anyway, no matter what. But I might be able to sell 2,000 if the circumstances on certain products, or even more than 2,000, if I can get hold of them, if the situation changes on the listings. So I'll be quite attentive to a handful of listings over that period, and I'll do it myself because it's always time sensitive. You've got to be just doing minor checks for, like, is it in stock? What is the number of sellers now compared to yesterday morning or yesterday evening? Just not like, it doesn't take long, but you're going to constantly be checking, what's the stock count. The fact, if I'm looking at BuyBook Pro, for example, what's the stock count against all the sellers compared to what it was this morning? It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to roughly get a feel for what's going on. Obviously, checking the rank and all the basic stuff, which I'll know of probably already. And then what I'll do, let's say that I notice I had 300 left. I sold 200. I'm like, okay, that's about 10 days of stock. Let's say I'm like, okay, let's see if it's still in stock. If it's still in stock, maybe I'll go, okay, right, I need to replenish that, but I've got 300. No immediate rush to get it for tomorrow morning delivery or something. But, I'm building up those kind of like scenarios in my head, really, because whether things do change, I already have the answer and I can just implement. And then I notice it goes out of stock for 1 day, but comes back into stock. And I'm like, okay. Because, after selling the same items or similar items, almost identical, like a different version of the same item, and you get a feel for that website, like I know Thornton's has a lot of stock at the beginning and usually goes out of stock towards the end of Christmas. It doesn't mean everything will. So I don't know what will be left. I don't know what will be in stock and out of stock, but I have a rough idea of the kind of basket of items that will. And I'm looking to figure out in advance, or as quick as I can, which ones are probably going to do that so that I can keep up my stock limit. So if I've got 300, I want to make sure I don't really push too low, because if I can sell those 300 anyway aggressively, and I might only take 90p profit, but it's still not, if I've got them and I can sell them, I've got the cash as well, I might as well just do that because Q4. This money's money. It's better to have it than not. But really, I want to be selling 2,000. I don't want to buy too many and not be able to sell them. Ultimately, that's the other side of the coin. You don't want to be too aggressive. And if I start noticing that the stock is looking it's out of stock for a half a day or 3 hours, and it's back in stock, I'm like, oh, and that gives me a signal that they don't have, that something could be coming up where maybe they're not going to be in stock for forever. And then I might at that point go, okay, let's buy another 300 as like a contingency. I don't need it right now, but I might need it in 3-4 days. But I'd rather buy it now just to be sure. And then what I'm doing is once, let's say 2 of those items out of those 10 start to go in and out of stock a little bit more. And sometimes they might go out of stock. That's the play. You want it to go out of stock. But then what you usually see is that you have, and then you'll see for like 4 or 5 days it's out of stock, and then you might see it come back in with like 400 in stock. But at that point, I'm aggressive on my buying. So I'm slowly aggressive as I notice it going out, dipping in and out of stock. So that's why you have to be quick looking at the website, for example, because if you don't look often enough, you're not going to notice that little bit of a lapse where it goes out of stock, because you're just not going to be quick enough. It will look like it's still in stock as it was yesterday. And then, not to say that you can always take advantage of that, because it could never go back in stock at all. So that's why I always like to have a little bit of surplus on the back, like what I've got. If it does, then you could come back into stock, and I could see that the thought is you can see out of 999 how many are left. So I like that. If it lets you add 999 to cart, I know there's plenty. So that's like another little addition that I add into that to give me an overall feel for it. And then if I can see there's only 400 or anything less than 999, and I know it's been out of stock for 1 day about a week ago, and it's been out of stock for 4 days in the last 4 days, I'm happy to go and buy however many that could be, 600, 400, it will be what it is. And I already have some in Amazon, and I already just bought some as like slightly earlier, like 5 days ago. So I already know I've got about 600, 500 kind of around that I can sell. I want to try to pick up a bit more if I can, but we're never going to get exactly what we want. It's just about maximizing what we can. If I can do that, then great. If I can't, because it just stays out of stock, doesn't mean that I've lost the opportunity. It just means, okay, that's fine. Now I know what I'm working with. Because obviously at one point, I don't know how many I can get my hands on, but I don't want to be too aggressive. But then if I can't get any more, I still have whatever I've got left. That's like 300 in Amazon, and I bought 300 as a contingency because I saw it was looking, went out of stock for like half a day, and I was like, I'd rather buy them now than lose out later, because I will need them. I have 600. What I'll instantly do is then raise the prices of my stock. Let's say I'm taking £1 profit because I can sell 50 to 100 a day at a quid profit, depending on the sellers. But I don't want to do that now because I can see it's out of stock. So what I'm doing is I'm bumping up the price. I'm basically doing a rough calculation of how long it would take for everyone to sell out, and I'm going, that's 10 days. It could be 12. Okay, we'll say it's 12. Look, I'm not, I don't have to be perfect. I still have 4 weeks of Q4. So let's say it's 14 days. Just, you obviously you're going to adjust that time every day. You're going to see how many have sold, because you're going to see how many people have in stock. And then you're going to add in maybe, some people might restock because they still have some in their garage or something, or they haven't sent it in. So, just rough approximations there. And then what I usually try to aim for is I want to be one of the last on the listing for the last 2 weeks of Q4, and actually now be selling that product at double. And I have enough stock to actually be selling less. So again, then there's a balance of, if I have 5,000 units, I probably don't want to put the price too high because I need to sell 5,000 units before Q4 ends. But if I've only got 600, I can kind of work out. What I do is I just manually increase the price. Let's say that I'm the only one in the buy box, so there's maybe a merchant and me. I'll manually increase the price and basically figure out, if I've got 600 and I got 2 weeks to sell it, how many do I need to sell a day? And I'll figure out where that price point is for it to be fulfilled. While also always looking at the website, because I don't want them to come back into stock. Because if they come back into stock, then other people can jump back on the listing, and I might not be able to take advantage of that premium for very long at all. It could be like a couple of days. And now not only do I have all that competition back, I've now still got 550 units, because maybe I only sell 50, and I've got to now make sure I sell those. So it's kind of like a balancing act. And if it does come back into stock, and I'm quick enough to notice, I can buy it all out because I don't want anyone else restocking. Because now I've got that listing under more control, because there's now not 20 sellers, there's 4 or 3 or 2. And I can already see that the people that are FBA are going to sell out. If I just let them sell out, it might be 2 days. So I got all this plan in place. The merchant fulfiller don't worry about, just the FBA. And what I'll do is, if I notice it come back into stock, I want to try to get all that stock as quickly as I can. Yes, someone might get some, it's not going to, I can't be perfect, so that I can add that into what's going on. As long as I've got time, add that into my stock to obviously get a premium, but then I'm going to have to recalculate the price to sell it at to make sure I sell that new, let's say I now have 1,000 units, I now have to obviously work out how many I need to sell a day to 1,000, but ultimately, if I've got the cash in the bank, any profit's profit. So even bringing a price down to sell more units in a day isn't a bad thing, because I'm overall making more money across the whole range of the quantity that I have, if you get what I'm trying to say. And then if it does end up coming back into stock, I know this is an extremely long explanation, but if it does come back into stock, then I'll know that I've got a window of like 3 days, maybe a bit longer, to sell at a premium before I've got to go back to selling it at a competitive price. So what I'm overall trying to do, the best case scenario is I notice early on that I need to raise my prices to maintain the stock as long as possible to get a premium on as many units as possible. I don't want to be waiting till the sellers are gone to then adjust my price, because I could have not sold 100 units and I could make an extra £5 on each unit, and or even more units than that, because I don't want to, obviously it's going to be selling so much more at a cheap price as well. I want to be careful not to lose a premium because I'm trying to be over cautious. And so it's a very, very, it's kind of like repetitive now a bit to me, doing all that, because I'm only focusing on a handful of them. So it's not like I'm jumping around ASIN to ASIN like, okay, what's this one? I'm kind of focusing on those, because if I can get now £8 profit on 600 units, right before I was getting £1-2, I don't need a lot of that to be going on to obviously make an opportunity like decent over that period, as well as obviously you've got all the other stock that's selling as and when it is, and I kind of just like to play that a lot over Q4, focusing on those kind of opportunities, because and the only thing you have to obviously make sure is you've got the cash in the bank to be buying out any stock. So it's a fine balance, because you don't want to be buying stock forever, because they could have like 10,000 units, or they could have 100,000 units. You don't know when it's going to go out. So you don't want to be doing it that way, where you're just trying to buy it all out to get to there's none left. You're waiting for the signs that, the indicators that they might not have loads. Which again, you never know. But I've done it because I've slowly done it over time, over the years. So back in the day, I would have done the same thing, but I would have bought 200, and I would have ended up going, oh, I could have sold 2,000. The next year I would have bought 500, and I would have been like, oh, I could have sold 2,000. And the next year I would have, and I slowly just adjusted to it. And where the pattern repeated, obviously I've slowly been more confident in increasing the amount that I buy. And so that's kind of where it comes. So yeah, if there was 800 of, because I can see that 999 is the max, and Thornless, if it's anything lower than that, that's good data to have, because I can kind of work out if there was 800, I can buy that. And worst case scenario, I would be like 600 in stock, 800 buy. If I was the only one left on the buy box and I had to sell them all, could I? Because obviously you don't want to overload 800 to say that you've now got them all. And what I would do is I would be like, well, how many could I sell at just £1 profit? So like in some cases, I might have to bring the price down because I need to sell out, but then I can raise it once I've done my calculations about how many I have in stock, how many can I sell, how long do I have left to sell, like before, let's say the 23rd, 22nd of December, all of that will come together, and it will mean that I understand where I need to sell that product, depending on the thing. So ultimately, very expansive explanation for me, I know, but I'll leave it there on that before I confuse anyone else too much, because
no, that's great.
A bit of
I think you've explained that really well, and it's nice. It's nice that you said you've obviously you've scaled it up methodically. Like, you didn't start by buying way too many that you couldn't afford without having cash in the bank. So you started when you didn't know too much about the skill. and you've done several Q4s now, so you're pretty much a pro at this. But I can also see why you can't really. It'll be super difficult to hand that off to a VA, because there's so many different touch points that you need to be having a handle on and having a knowledge on, and like skin in the game which you developed. And the similar parallel for me is that with books, every January and August there's textbook season, so you can obviously see and keep it each year that certain textbooks, whether it's a psychology textbook or a medical textbook, the offers will go from say 100 down to 10, and your balancing act is like, obviously how many can you buy, and then like how much of a gamble are you going to take? Like, do you want to sell them at the start of textbook season for a nice profit, or do you want to sell them right at the end for an amazing profit, but then also potentially risk not selling all your stock through? And that's why when you were talking about that, it interested me, because I was just like, you kind of explained it a bit, but do you ever like feel like you want to take a bit of a gamble and like hold a ton of your stock right until those last few days when everyone else is out of stock, and then you can obviously make that ridiculous margin, but then you might be left with a load of chocolate that's gonna go off?
Well, yeah, like the thing is, like with the chocolate, like with some of those chocolates, they probably won't. They last until some might be January. That will probably play a part into it too. If it was like January, I basically have to sell them in December. Or no, it wouldn't be January, to be fair, because I probably wouldn't risk it. If someone was buying on the 22nd of December, it expired on the 1st of January, then I probably wouldn't be buying it in the first place. So it probably would have been something like, I'm just trying to remember, maybe even March, which still gives you buffer time, but it's not like if I was going to sell a lot of chocolates, it could be like in Easter, Mother's Day, but then Valentine's Day. That doesn't really give you much room. If it's like, you maybe 31st of March, you could squeeze it through on Valentine's Day, but again, it's a bit, it's close if you've got it in there. And I don't know, I can't remember what the time frame with Amazon expiries is. I always forget that, like when they sort of automatically set it to expire. So I usually prefer to sell out, because what I notice I do is, as I'm raising that price to figure out where, because I like to see also where the top price can be, but eventually I get a suppressed buy box.
Oh, okay.
And so I would rather have a buy box. So I'll basically keep raising it £1, or I might, I'll jump up to start with. If I'm at like 14, 15, 16.99, I might go to 29.99 and just see what happens. I'll refresh the page after 15 minutes. At some point, it will probably be suppressed. So I think one of the examples, at 34.99, it gets suppressed, and I get maybe 8 sales a day.
Right.
Considering these were selling at like 14, 15.99 before, quite well, because there's no buy box. And if I bring it to 29.99, there's a buy box, and then I might sell 30 a day. And I prefer just to do that. I like to keep the buy box rather than having a suppressed buy box. If I've only got a handful left at the end, then I may whack it at that price. But I do actually like to have a good balance between not being too like excessive in terms of pricing. Like, I'm not worried if I had 5 left. I might just see, let's put it at 34.99. I've got, if they don't all sell out by tomorrow, then I can just put it back to the buy box and get rid of them. But I'm not too, only because I have a lot of expiries, because not that I have loads now, but I definitely over the COVID year, like, because I had so much stock, because it was just mental everywhere with definitely what I was selling, even like Bisto sauces, it was selling like it was Q4, the amount that you could sell through. And so it was, but that's always going to lead to some items that maybe end up getting a random suppressed buy box, and then people don't buy them, or there's something going on with the listing, like a merchant fulfilled might end up somehow getting it, and they just, for some reason, you just can't get the buy box. I know that happened a lot, but by the end of that year, usually after Q4, I have a bunch of stuff which I have to recall because of the expiries. So I'd rather just, more than anything, I'd rather not add to that. I'd rather just bank in the profit basically and book it and lock it in, because it's already at a decent premium. I mean, I would have been happy just selling that Thornton's thing at a quid profit, because I could just keep buying that stock, keep buying that stock, and obviously up to for like another week or two. Obviously making sure that I don't have too much for the last couple of weeks of December. But again, it's only a quid profit, so I don't mind doing that if I've got the money. But again, I'd rather also make sure, I try to get a balance of it. And the way I then take it is I then take the average profit over the quarter, for example, I don't really look too much at like, oh, I made, this 100, I made £9. I kind of just go, what's the average that I made? It could be like 630 on all of the units. So even from the ones I sold in the beginning of October when there was 30 people on the listing and it was selling at like a quid profit or whatever it is, I don't worry. Yeah, even though people are like, it's only a quid. I'm like, well, but actually I made an average of like £6.80. And they're like, well, how did you get that? As in, that's more of the important number over like 1,000 units or something, that I'll take than it is anything else. But yeah, in terms of the risk side, if it's more expiry products, I won't do that. But for books, you wouldn't have that. I guess you have like newer versions of them and stuff, which is kind of expiry in a way, but not.
You just have the risk.
You kind of have that.
You just have the risk that after September, you potentially won't be able to sell that book again until January, and then it's obviously just sitting there, will not make any profit. So it's much better to make $10 profit halfway through September, than risk maybe making 100, but then it doesn't necessarily sell. So I usually err on the side of caution because I would rather have the profit and the money in the bank, but I know that I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. So that's why I wanted to ask you. But it's kind of cool that you've got a price ceiling almost. So your decision's almost made for you.
It doesn't mean I haven't experimented over the years, like to play around. But like at some point you just get a bit like it's similar with NFTs. Not this is an NFT chat, but you can buy this because I'm getting a lot into that, and I'm like part of a community where I sort of help people and all that kind of thing. But I kind of say like you could have 50 grand, you could buy NFTs, and you could be like, I'm holding these because I believe it's going to be an amazing project. And they're going to hold forever. Like that's kind of like people say they're going to just hold forever. Doesn't care what the price is. It's going to hold. I'm like, but then you've got no money to do anything else with. So you're buying them all now, and you basically hold it. But if you're buying and selling, you keep cash flow. So you're locking in profits. So you know that they're done. That profits are done, and you could potentially buy back in later. Like you not if it's 100% applicable to say arbitrage as such, but in a way it could be. If you were seeing it in terms of you didn't have much money in the bank, you're starting off, you might be able to buy that, you might be able to sell it for a profit and then buy back that same product a bit cheaper. It's kind of like that. And then you could buy more now because you've got £1,000, you can actually buy more because you notice there's an offer going on and you can sort of do that. Kind of similar. It's like you can play the more risk side of things, like, and some things will do really well. Like if you've got 100 things, 10 might end up making 10 times the profit that you could now. But then the other the other percentage is either going to be the same or maybe worse. And it's like, yes, some months are going to be really great, but then you're also going to have some months that are terrible. And what that's going to do is just cause that. And if you're having that, it's not very healthy. Like, it feels great when you have those highs, but then you're going to have so many fluctuations in terms of like because you don't know when they're going to happen, when you're going to end up getting that premium. It can have, it might work, it might not. And I think it's better to have more of a balance because then because obviously humans are emotional beings, that anything emotional causes them to act weird. So, and they're going to end up doing something that's a bit unusual, basically.
Especially
like
now,
it could be
probably.
A bad decision and so, yeah, people are acting they just act like in fear most people act in fear. And so like when they're fearful, they act weird and they don't logically think things through. And if you're having like that and you see that 1 month on Amazon, you're making a loss because nothing that you held on to actually sold at all, it starts to like play with your mind. Like, oh my God, and I've had it before as well. Like, back in the day, like I'd be like, I thought I was doing great, but now I've had a bit of a £300 loss this month. And I'm like, stuff wasn't selling. Like I thought it would. And you start just like going a bit more yo-yo-y in your head and and that made me think more short term because I was more thinking like I need next month. I was playing more like short term mindset because of that. But then really you should be focusing on sort of the broader, longer term picture. But I couldn't get out of that short term view because I was having, not to say that it was like gambling at all or anything, but because I was obviously earlier on in my development and stuff. It was obviously I was learning a lot, I was consuming a lot. I wanted to try to balance that out. So it was more just like, even if it's flat and up and a little bit down, that's healthier because I can at least have a bit more stability and thinking more long term. But if I don't have that, then I think it's very difficult to actually get in your mind anything less than you're just going to be short term focused because you're obviously going to say, well, if I have 6 months like that, or 4 months like that, I've got no money left. And so there's no point me thinking about a year's time because I won't even be able to do this in 3 or 4 months if I keep losing money. So yeah, something that I thought I'd add.
No, yeah, I think that's super key to people who do well on Amazon versus not, is having that long-term mindset, because it also means you've got to have a higher risk tolerance as well. And a lot of people, I think, do have the short-term mindset, whether that's from being an employee and they just don't like taking a risk. But it's interesting you're saying about NFTs. So do you think that the skills you've learned from Amazon have been very transferable to, it sounds like you're almost arbing
I think every
NFTs.
single one, I basically just look at NFTs as Amazon.
Right.
And I even talk about products, and I say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean, like when I'm doing videos, I'm like products, because I'm thinking about, and I see, like, I look at the data. So it's like Keeper. Like I literally look at like the averages, simple. You see a chart and it shows you the highs of where it's sold, and it shows you the lows and it shows you the averages. Just like, when you see the high of a buy box, if it's only for a short period, you see the lows, it could be, like a short period, and then you know where the average, even if it's not there now, you know where like 3/4 of the year it's selling at an average. Well, I kind of just look at that and I'm like, you don't want to be buying up here. Well, you don't want to be buying up here, but you don't want to be trying to sell, like you don't want to have the goal of, I'm going to buy it to sell it here or higher, because it's only gone there a couple, like, when it goes, like the buy box, it goes there like 5 or 6 times a year, but only for a day or two. And it's like, yes, and again, you could do that. You could buy 6 and go, right, I'm going to hold this for long term and I'm going to wait for that. But, it's going to take, you're not going to be doing a lot of sales. You're not going to be gaining traction by doing that. Yes, now and then it will happen. Sometimes it might even go higher. Yeah, it's not going to say it's not going to, but it's the opportunity is quite slim there, because there's not a lot. If it's 6 hours a year that you can do that. So I'm trying to think of the bigger picture. It's going to look great on paper, like you made a 300% ROI or whatever, but actually the amount you've made and the risk is actually not really worth the actual outcome. So same with NFTs, I just look at the data and I go, well, you don't want to buy up here, because you would buy it at that price as well as, in theory, sell it at that price. But also you could go, okay, well, it's gone up there 3 or 4 times before, so maybe I will say that's the high of where I could sell it, max. I don't look like where it could be in the future. I go, is in the last year it's gone there 4 times. So, and it seems to go, not perfect, but it's pretty much, I don't know, let's say it's 10 ETH. Well, I know people won't understand what 10 ETH is, but let's say it's 10 ETH. That'll be about $20,000. And I'll be like, okay, so at least my higher target could be $20,000, or sorry, 10 ETH, because that could fluctuate in terms of USD price. Okay, it's getting confusing now. But then really, I won't tell you that price. I'll be like, I want to be buying in at the bottom, or the average bottom, wherever that lower end is. And I want to be selling essentially in the middle or above the middle. But I don't, and if I had like many of them, I could play like multiple strategies, because I'm taking profits on like layer 1, which is like the bottom average, taking profits on the median, and I'm taking profits on the higher average, and I'm taking profits in like an amazing outcome, the top. And it doesn't mean that it couldn't end up going on further from that, no one knows, but I don't know that. The data doesn't show me that, I like the future's unknown until it happens always. And I'd rather just, so similar to Keep, it's like, yeah, this product could be discontinued. And like, you probably saw, maybe you have, but like this products I've sold and they're discontinued, and I can sell them for great profit, like premium, right? But I only have 10 left. I'm not, okay, great, but I can still, and I know they happen. I just don't know when they happen. It's like all these unknowns, and and it's like, I won't ever play for any of that. Like people sometimes probably do that with Lego, for example. They will stock up and then hold it because they're like, well, I understand that they're going to be discontinued potentially, but that's such like a long-term speculation, and it's just an unknown variable of when it will or when it won't or whatever. Not to say you can't make money on that. So ultimately, you can make money on it, every different sort of formula. It's just you got to work out, if you all had a full-time job getting 200 grand a year, and you're looking for a bit of like extra random money that didn't take a lot of work or something, yeah, maybe you could make all of these strategies. Some of the strategies would fit perfectly for you, because that isn't, you're not looking to scale to £1 million a year business or whatever it is. You're not looking to do any of that, because you're literally just looking to do less work but play a bit more speculatively, because you don't really need the money, but it's nice to have an extra bit of a bonus if that does work out. Like, yeah, everything does work ultimately. It's just working out like it doesn't work for you, and does the strategy work for you? All those things really. But yeah, I found that Amazon is like almost like 90% the same as NFTs. I don't know why. It's really weird how I kind of see it. I don't know if I just like made it like that, but yeah, I mean, ultimately data is data. Like looking at like a trading view of like the price of like euro versus dollar is just data. And it's like, I kind of look at all of it now. I look at trading view, which is looking at like, stocks and shares, and that the same as I look at Keeper. And I used to do that before NFTs. Now I look at NFTs just like I look at Keeper, and anything can. I mean, you could pretty much convert any data into a Keeper chart. Obviously, it would be representing something else, but you could do that. And I guess ultimately, it's just the base data of anything is going to be it's going to be transposed across multiple industries anyway.
Yeah, that's super useful.
You kind of see what I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're the first person to explain NFTs to me like that, and you've simplified it. And because you've almost put it in an Amazon framework, I'm more tempted to get involved with it now because it's very easy.
I mean, it's crazy difficult.
Yeah.
But I just started with that because that's all I knew. If you get what I mean, like I didn't know where to start because it's overwhelming. There's a gazillion different projects out there.
And it's so new as well.
They could go all. Yeah, it's so new. Lots can just be terrible, but they look good. Like it. And I had to start with something, and I thought, well, I understand. When you go onto like the platform, like an eBay, like an Amazon, like the marketplace, you can go onto a collection, and you can literally just go into activity and see how many sales have been done today. What's the highest price people have bought things, how, and you can just look at all the numbers basically. And obviously the ones that have the longest history, I like more, like Keeper. Anything that has a longer history, I can get better averages, a better feel for that product. NFTs, if it's only been out a week, you don't know where that real price will settle because it's not got many sellers. It's not many people haven't, there's not a lot for sale. And you've got, in 6 months, when there's a lot more sellers, there's a lot more, the price will find its natural market value. But again, like with Keeper and with the NFT kind of data, like I play it the same way as that. So anything that has a long history, I like more because I can see like it obviously it's got, a year is obviously a lot more data than it is in one day. So yeah. It just gives you a better, it gives you more confidence looking at something that has a bigger history. Same with Keeper, same with looking at NFTs.
Cool, that's interesting. I'm conscious that we're coming up on time for you. I really appreciate you taking the time. So I'd like to loop this back to Amazon. I'd like to know, what are your goals or plans for this year and beyond with your Amazon business or NFTs from the latter, just business in general?
Yeah, so with I had so going into COVID and everything, I just went like that. Even though COVID was happened a couple of months in, that was my year that I was just going to go mental anyway. So I'd already kind of had the setup, and I was like, I want to do $1 million. Well, I don't know, maybe it was less than that, but I ended up doing like $1 million in that year. But once I'd done, that was my goal for a while. And once I'd done that, I then was breaking down is it really worth putting in all that extra work? For example, if $1 million's going to bring in 100 grand, let's just make some numbers up. Does 500 grand bring in 60,000? So it's almost more beneficial if it's double the work between 500 and $1 million, which it might not be, but if it is it better just to do 500 grand? Because you're getting half the time back, but you're only losing 40% of the income. So you get 50% time. You get what I'm trying to say. So I was trying to balance that out, thinking, is it, because I don't want to just do it for the sake of it. Ultimately, you don't want to just to say, oh, look at me, I've done this. And no, again, I don't want to be like, I know Tom has it, but I don't, maybe he does. He has the confidence, but him getting off a £240,000 loan from Amazon or whatever, it's like. Not to say that you can do it, but that's it's on a personal guarantee, those things as well. With Amazon, rather than if it wasn't, I wouldn't be as worried because that's kind of the whole reason that a lot of people take limited companies, but it is, and it's like, how big do you want to? Where do how far do you want to go? And you can keep going forever ultimately if you don't really have that. You don't care as much, but I was like. Just taking it back a bit and thinking, where do I want to go with my time, with my VAs? Do I want to hire more and more VAs? Do I want to be doing this? Do I want to, do I want to be spending time getting more, like tons more, obviously to expand, more wholesale, more this, more that. And I kind of just thought to myself, ultimately, no, really I wanted to find out that balancing act. But for last year for me was really quite bad. I can't even remember, I didn't even really look at the sales that I did for the year. I actually just didn't even look at the end. Normally every year I just like review, but because it was so much worse than the year before, I kind of like, you know, whatever it was. I actually never looked, just thinking about it now, even though we're now in like May. Like I'd look monthly, but I wouldn't look in a year. Like I know what I did over December and stuff like that, because I knew I hadn't done as well. But I was like, because yeah, a lot of people found that, and it was so tough for like the groceries and stuff last year. But that was fine because I know that with every up there's downs. Like I get that. Like, you know, I wish we could have had that COVID volume just spiraling forever, but I knew it wouldn't last. And I was like, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And so last year was like a rejig, getting everything kind of like back into the norm, like, because, you know, I was in that kind of overload, sending, buying, just a lot of everything. But last year was more a consolidation, getting everything back together, outsourcing to my VA more accounting, actually, like getting more accounts. So trying to just like lean up everything, trying to, you know, like in terms of like not getting back to the understanding of how much stock I need for every product, because it was skewed the year before. I was just trying to balance everything out. Getting my VAs to start taking on more responsibility so I don't have to. Because ultimately, what I knew that I wanted to move into something else. And so I'm happy to bring that Amazon business down, probably to something like £500,000 a year in pounds. It's kind of where I feel that's probably the right place, just because I know the opportunity there for Q4 is like great. And so, you know, I thought to myself even once, like, should I just do like 85 grand a year? No VAT. Don't sell hardly anything for all the year and just do basically the premium items. I was just toying with all these different scenarios in my mind. But ultimately I didn't really ever did sort of go down that route, because I was like, well, it's so easy to do 100 grand in in a December, that 85 grand seems too little anyway. So it was just kind of like, okay, probably that's not right. But I think about 400 to 500 grand is like the sweet spot. Making, you know, just getting rid of, just sort of have loads of expired products, loads of junk, loads of overstock, you know, like just really kind of trimming it all down so it's a much more healthy overall like dynamic that I've got going on. And that will leave more money in the bank, which I used to think was a bad idea, but that's okay, because in terms of like where I want to take my Amazon business, it was never to be like a massive warehouse with staff, having a fulfillment center. Like I dabbled with all these ideas, but like in terms of my enjoyment, it wasn't really there. Like I loved the crypto scene for years and years. But I wanted to find something in that. And I always found, like I said at the beginning, I don't want to force anything to do it. And when NFTs came around, it was the perfect marry between like crypto space and kind of like the things that I enjoy. For example, like gaming, like you own this NFT and it lets you play a game. Or I have an NFT that I bought that lets me get like priority pass. I know this isn't like, you know, business as such, but it is. But I'll get to the point. Like it gives me priority pass. It gives me free flights. It gives me apartment stays in different cities around the world. Like, you know, I enjoy being part of these communities and like trying to get involved with this. So like me and Luke Filer, I built a community in Discord and I created a course for it. Because I know this space is super early and it's going to go amazing and also terrible at the same time in terms of like the fluctuations in prices and everything. Is just going to be wild, like literally is the wild west. But I want to be in that because I want to learn from it all. Like I like to be the guinea pigs. I want to learn from all that. Let's say that for the next 2 years NFTs are actually useless, like everything just dies. But that's cool because I can learn everything I can about not only NFT projects, I can see what comes out the other side. And I've been in it long enough to know, oh, wow, that's survived. That's doing so much better than it was. I've got that historical experience of what happened now or has happened in the last year. If it does go to nothing, like, you know, if it does absolutely crash with, well, everything else in the world, that's fine. Because then I can learn, like I can learn and give that experience back. And that's what I've started to do with the community, with Luke Filer. I basically built like an 80 video training. And not to say that it's amazing. I mean, some people have said it is amazing, but I know that you have to be in something for years to really get that finesse in terms of like experience. And yeah, that's okay with me because I know this space is super early. And so if I'm looking at like, the longer term, something that I can do in like 10 years, because not to say that I know that's going to be, but with Amazon, it was never like, I want to be doing this in 20 years or 10 years. And I'm already 6 years in. And so it was like, I needed to find at that point the right place for me, because I was starting not to enjoy it as much as I was before. And obviously that to me is like important. Not to say that I hated it at all, because I don't. But like I wanted to find something that I enjoyed, like a bit of a passion. And some people do love it, and that's great for them. But it was more like I loved it because it was that step from a job. But now really I want to take that next step into like a passion / job. If I don't want to really ever have it called that, because I want it to be fun. So I almost want to be doing it like going and playing tennis or something, So because something I enjoy, and that's where I'm looking to pursue my time more than anything now. So that's why I'm bringing that business down in the Amazon side, so that I'm not looking to invest all my time trying to grow and evolve that. I'm actually trying to bring it down so that I can then remove more time from it for myself to then pursue like understanding and growing in the NFT space down the line, whether that's in the next 3 years or 5 or however long it takes. So yeah, that's ultimately where I'm looking to grow to.
Cool. Thank you for that. I think that's sounds like you've got a solid plan. Reduce the hours
solid. It might sound like a solid plan, but you know how it is.
No, but I spoke to Luke. We talked a little bit about NFTs, and I was kind of interested. But speaking to you made me more interested. I do have a bit of time to research.
It's literally something. It's something that is like so long term that it's better to It's not, you don't even have to do anything in it, but at least like understand, like not just the basics of like what it is, but a bit like how it works, because it's like, like with Amazon, there's a lot to it, but to understand the basics, it's not that, it's not, like if you're someone could spend a day with you, for example, and give you all the basics for Amazon, which means you could do it, but you're not going to be potentially that successful at it, because you just don't know all the expansive knowledge that can go into it as well. So it's more like, but at least having that like basic understanding and the processes of how everything links in and works, I think is really going to help for the long term. Because I feel like even if it's not right now, like I want to be in it because I want to be learning. And so I want to be that guinea pig that learns in the worst times and the best times, so that I can then give that back, because that just seems to be what I like to do. But for other people, like you don't really even have to get involved with buying and selling stuff. It's more about just getting the understanding and then watching that understanding and that space grow, so that you can see where it was and then you can see where it is. And then that will give you the understanding of like, oh, wow, I can't believe it's now here. Where if you ignore it, you see it in 5 years and you're like, oh, what's this? And you don't really understand where it's the growth of the whole kind of ecosystem. And that will give you the understanding of the potential, because you can see where it was and where it is. And then you can go, wow, I can't believe it's done so much in that time. But if you just jump to it in 5 years' time and ignore it, you're not going to have any understanding of where it's been and the kind of journey it's been on. Like, it's almost like Bitcoin. It's like, it's been around for like 12 years, but it's probably like 4 years ago when people started noticing it. And so if you would look at if you were around since back then, you would have understood that people were getting like, oh my God, I'm going to sell Bitcoin at $18. I can't believe it. And it's gone from 18 to 9. Oh, I've lost so much money. But if you were around then, you would be laughing at that. And it gives you that resilience, understanding how to make it in the future, because that at the time, it gives you that perspective. But anyway, I need to go because
I'll let you get
on too long, but I thought I'd just finish it there.
No, awesome. Well, like where can people find you on the internet and like this Discord and NFT group if they want to be a part of that?
Well, I have my Amazon group is Mr. FBA UK in Facebook. I do have a YouTube channel as well. In terms of the NFT thing, it's called like on the Facebook is World of NFTs with LukeyBoy.eth, because Lukey Boy is my nickname. And .eth is just like an address that I got, but it's just like a thing. The same with YouTube. It's World of NFTs, I think. It's just World of NFTs. And yeah, so I'm just documenting my journey. Pretty much the same as Amazon. Documenting my journey from the beginning. The good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing, if I get that. And that's that, yeah. So yeah, you can find me there if you want to find out more. Awesome. Yeah, I'll put links in the show notes and all that jazz. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a great conversation, and hopefully we can do a round 2 at some point, and maybe it'll be a bit longer. But yeah, I'll let you get off to your gym session and letting the dogs out. That's it, yeah. All right, mate. It's been great chatting. Yeah, you too. Thanks very much.